Part 1. The Bonehunters is the sixth installment in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, and it opens in the chaotic aftermath of the cataclysmic events depicted in Midnight Tides. The narrative quickly establishes a tone of instability and impending upheaval across multiple continents, as the Malazan Empire grapples with internal unrest, external threats, and the lingering consequences of divine manipulation. The story begins in the city of Malaz, where political tension simmers beneath the surface. Empress Lacine's rule is increasingly fragile, and her network of spies, known as the Claw, has grown both powerful and dangerously autonomous. Adjunct Tavore Paran, newly appointed commander of the 14th Army, prepares to lead her forces on a campaign that is not fully explained, even to her closest allies. Tavore is a distant and enigmatic figure, and her motivations remain opaque, but her authority is unquestioned. The soldiers under her command, many of them veterans of the brutal Seven Cities campaign, are weary yet fiercely loyal. Meanwhile, in the city of Itko Khan, a convergence of assassins, mages, and shadowy agents sets the stage for one of the novel's most explosive sequences. Kalam Makar, a former Claw assassin and now a key ally of Tavore, arrives in the city with the intention of confronting Lacine directly. However, he quickly becomes entangled in a web of intrigue involving rival factions within the Claw, each vying for dominance. The tension culminates in a massive, devastating attack involving sorcery and sabotage, resulting in widespread destruction and the deaths of countless civilians. This event underscores the instability of the Empire and foreshadows the larger conflicts to come. Parallel to these events, the narrative shifts to Seven Cities, where remnants of the Whirlwind Rebellion still linger. The land is scarred by war, and the Malazan presence is both resented and feared. Characters such as Fiddler, Quick Ben, and the rest of the Bridgeburners, now integrated into Tavore's army, continue to navigate the moral and psychological toll of their experiences. Their camaraderie provides moments of levity, but there is an undercurrent of dread as they sense that their next campaign will be unlike any they have faced before. A significant thread in this opening section involves the gods themselves, who play an active and often manipulative role in the mortal world. Shadow Throne and Cotillion, rulers of the Warren of Shadow, maneuver behind the scenes, influencing events for their own inscrutable purposes. Their interactions with mortal agents blur the line between divine will and human agency. At the same time, other ascendants and deities begin to stir, drawn by the convergence of power and the potential for upheaval. The Deck of Dragons, a mystical tool used to divine the movements of power in the world, becomes increasingly volatile. Readings suggest that a major realignment is underway, with new houses rising and old ones threatened. This instability reflects the broader theme of transformation that permeates the novel. The world of Malazan is not static. It is constantly evolving, often violently, as forces both mortal and divine clash and reshape the landscape. As the first part concludes, Tavore's army prepares to embark on a perilous journey across the sea to the continent of Lether. The purpose of this expedition remains unclear, but it is evident that it will have far-reaching consequences. The soldiers, hardened by previous campaigns, steel themselves for what lies ahead, even as rumors and fears circulate among the ranks. The stage is set for a complex and multifaceted narrative, where loyalty, power, and survival will be tested in ways that few can anticipate. Part 2. As the Bonehunters continues, the narrative expands in both scale and intensity, following Adjunct Tavore Paran's 14th Army as it sets sail from Seven Cities toward the distant continent of Lether. The journey itself becomes a crucible, testing not only the physical endurance of the soldiers, but also their cohesion as a fighting force. Packed into transport ships, plagued by shortages, and haunted by uncertainty, the army begins to fracture along subtle lines of distrust and fatigue. Tavore remains distant and inscrutable, rarely addressing her troops directly, which only deepens the sense of unease among officers and rank-and-file alike. Fiddler, one of the most experienced and grounded soldiers in the army, emerges as a central perspective during this phase. Through his observations, the reader gains insight into the morale of the troops and the quiet resilience that defines them. Despite their grievances, the soldiers of the 14th Army, mockingly dubbed the Bonehunters, maintain a stubborn loyalty to one another. Their shared history in the crucible of 7 cities binds them more tightly than any formal command structure could. Still, there is an unspoken recognition that Tavore is leading them toward something momentous and possibly catastrophic. Meanwhile, political instability within the Malazan Empire continues to unfold. In Malaz City, the aftermath of the earlier devastation leaves the imperial administration reeling. Empress Lacine's grip on power weakens further as factions within the Claw maneuver for dominance. The internal fractures of the empire mirror the external threats it faces, suggesting that collapse could come from within as easily as from without. Rumors of rebellion and dissent spread, and the legitimacy of Lacine's rule is increasingly called into question. Kalam Makar's storyline also progresses during this section, as he navigates the dangerous aftermath of his actions in Malaz City. His attempt to confront the Empress has instead plunged him deeper into a web of conspiracies involving rogue Claw agents and hidden agendas. Kalam is forced to rely on his instincts and lethal skills to survive, but even he begins to sense that the game he is playing is far larger than he anticipated. His role shifts from would-be assassin to reluctant participant in a broader struggle for control over the Empire's future. Back on 7 cities, the land remains a volatile and wounded place. The remnants of the Whirlwind Rebellion continue to cast a long shadow, and new threats begin to emerge from the chaos. Among these is the growing influence of the cult of the crippled god, whose insidious reach extends into both mortal and divine realms. This presence introduces a darker, more existential threat, one that transcends conventional warfare and challenges the very fabric of reality within the Malazan world. The involvement of Ascendants becomes more pronounced as the story progresses. Shadow Throne and Cotillion continue their intricate manipulations, often acting through mortal agents whose understanding of the larger picture is limited at best. Their actions are not overtly malicious, but they are undeniably self-serving, and their interference complicates an already tangled web of cause and effect. Other powerful entities, including elder gods and newly risen ascendants, begin to converge on key locations, drawn by the same forces that are pulling Tavore's army toward Lether. One of the most significant developments in this part is the increasing instability of magic itself. Warrens, sources of magical power, begin to behave unpredictably, sometimes collapsing or bleeding into one another. This phenomenon not only endangers mages, but also signals a deeper imbalance in the world. The deck of dragons reflects this chaos, with readings becoming more erratic and difficult to interpret. The sense that something fundamental is shifting grows stronger, lending an air of inevitability to the unfolding events. As the fleet carrying the 14th Army approaches its destination, tension reaches a peak. The soldiers, already worn down by the journey, prepare for landfall with a mixture of dread and determination. Tavore's silence remains unbroken, but her resolve is evident in every decision she makes. The army may not understand her purpose, but they are committed to following her into whatever lies ahead. By the end of this section, the various narrative threads, imperial politics, divine intervention, and the march of Tavore's army, begin to converge more clearly. The stage is being set for a confrontation that will test not only the strength of the Malazan military, but also the resilience of the world itself. Part 3. In the third portion of the Bonehunters, the narrative accelerates toward convergence as multiple plot lines begin to intersect more directly, bringing both mortal and divine conflicts into sharper focus. The 14th Army, having endured a grueling sea voyage, finally reaches the shores of Lether, but their arrival is anything but triumphant. Instead of clarity, they are met with confusion, shifting alliances, and the unsettling realization that they have entered a land already destabilized by forces beyond their understanding. Lether itself is still reeling from the upheaval chronicled in Midnight Tides. The empire has undergone a dramatic transformation under the rule of Emperor Rulad Sengar, whose resurrection and cursed immortality have created a regime defined by paranoia, brutality, and instability. Rulad's repeated deaths and resurrections have eroded his sanity, and his court is a volatile environment where loyalty is enforced through fear and spectacle. This internal decay weakens Lether even as it projects outward strength, making it vulnerable to external threats such as the approaching Malazan forces. Adjunct Tavore's strategy begins to take shape, though it remains frustratingly opaque to her subordinates. Rather than launching an immediate assault, she exercises caution, gathering intelligence and positioning her forces with deliberate precision. This restraint creates tension among her officers, many of whom struggle to reconcile her silence with the urgency of their situation. Fiddler and others begin to suspect that Tavore's campaign is not simply a military conquest, but part of a larger, more enigmatic objective, one that may involve confronting powers far beyond the Letheri Empire. Within the ranks of the 14th Army, the strain of uncertainty continues to mount. Despite this, the soldiers demonstrate remarkable adaptability and resilience. Their shared identity as the Bonehunters solidifies during this phase, transforming from a derisive nickname into a badge of honor. The camaraderie among squads, particularly those led by veterans like Fiddler, becomes a crucial source of strength. Humor, storytelling, and small acts of defiance against despair help sustain morale in the face of an increasingly incomprehensible mission. Elsewhere, Kalam Mekar's storyline intersects more directly with the broader narrative. His journey through the fractured remnants of imperial authority reveals the extent to which the Malazan Empire is unraveling. The Claw, once a tightly controlled instrument of the Empress, has splintered into rival factions, each pursuing its own agenda. Kalam's encounters with these factions highlight the erosion of centralized power and the dangers posed by unchecked ambition. Though he began with a singular goal, he now finds himself drawn into a larger struggle that may determine the fate of the empire itself. At the same time, the influence of the crippled god becomes more overt and more disturbing. His agents operate in the shadows, spreading corruption and despair, and his presence is increasingly felt across multiple continents. Unlike other gods, whose motives can at least be partially understood, the crippled god represents a more alien and destructive force. His suffering and rage manifest in ways that destabilize both the physical world and the metaphysical structures that underpin it. This growing threat adds a layer of existential dread to the unfolding events, suggesting that the conflicts between empires may be overshadowed by something far more catastrophic. The role of magic continues to evolve in unpredictable ways. mages within Tavore's army, including the ever-resourceful Quick Ben, struggle to adapt to the erratic behavior of the Warrens. Their powers, once reliable, now carry an element of risk, forcing them to innovate and improvise. This instability reinforces the theme that the world itself is in flux, with established rules, breaking down under the pressure of converging forces. Meanwhile, the machinations of ascendants intensify. Shadow Throne and Cotillion continue to manipulate events from behind the scenes, but their actions suggest a growing urgency. They are no longer merely maneuvering for advantage. They appear to be responding to a threat that even they cannot fully control. Other ascendants, sensing the same shift, begin to take more direct action, further complicating the already intricate web of alliances and rivalries. As this part concludes, the various narrative threads draw closer together, with Tavore's army poised on the brink of engagement in Lether. The soldiers sense that they are approaching a Nirnayak moment, even if they do not understand its full significance. The tension is palpable, and the stakes, both personal and cosmic, continue to rise. Part 4. In the fourth segment of the Bonehunters, the narrative reaches a point of intense convergence, where long-building tensions erupt into open conflict and revelation. The various plot lines, military, political, and divine, begin to collide in ways that reshape the trajectory of the story and redefine the stakes for nearly every major character. Adjunct Tavore Paran's strategy, which has remained elusive for much of the novel, begins to manifest more concretely as the 14th Army advances deeper into Lether. Rather than pursuing a conventional campaign of conquest, Tavore maneuvers her forces with a precision that suggests a far more specific objective. Her refusal to explain her intentions continues to frustrate her officers. But by this stage, a grudging trust has taken root among the Bonehunters. They may not understand their commander, but they have come to believe in her resolve and in the necessity of their mission. The Letheri Empire, under the increasingly unstable rule of Emperor Rulad Sengar, begins to fracture under pressure. Rulad's erratic behavior and the corrosive influence of his cursed existence undermine the cohesion of his court and military. His repeated resurrections, once a symbol of divine favor, have become a source of fear and revulsion, even among his closest followers. This internal instability weakens Lether's ability to respond effectively to external threats, creating opportunities that Tavore is quick to exploit. As the Malazan forces engage with Letheri resistance, the battles themselves are marked by both brutality and complexity. Erikson does not present warfare as a straightforward clash of good versus evil. Instead, each encounter is layered with moral ambiguity and human cost. Soldiers on both sides are depicted as individuals caught in circumstances beyond their control, and the violence they enact is shown to have lasting psychological consequences. The Bonehunters, despite their discipline and experience, are not immune to these effects, and their sense of purpose is continually tested. Meanwhile, the influence of the crippled god becomes increasingly central to the unfolding events. His agents and followers work to destabilize both the Malazan and Letheri forces, seeking to exploit the chaos for their own ends. The crippled god's presence is not merely that of a distant antagonist. It is pervasive and insidious, affecting the environment, the behavior of individuals, and even the structure of reality itself. This growing threat begins to overshadow the more immediate conflicts between empires, hinting at a larger, more catastrophic confrontation on the horizon. Kalam Makar's journey intersects more directly with these developments, as he uncovers deeper layers of conspiracy within the Malazan Empire. The fragmentation of the Claw has reached a critical point, with rogue elements pursuing agendas that could further destabilize the already weakened imperial structure. Kalam's actions, though often solitary, have significant ripple effects, influencing the balance of power in ways that are not immediately apparent. His role evolves from that of a lone assassin to a pivotal figure in the broader struggle for the Empire's survival. The actions of ascendants and gods intensify during this phase, with Shadow Throne and Cotillion playing particularly active roles. Their interventions, while still cloaked in mystery, suggest a coordinated effort to counter the influence of the crippled god. Unlike earlier in the series, where their motives often seemed self-serving or opaque, their actions here carry a sense of urgency and even desperation. Other ascendants are also drawn into the conflict, creating a crowded and volatile divine landscape in which alliances shift rapidly and unpredictably. Magic continues to behave erratically, compounding the challenges faced by both armies. The instability of the Warrens forces mages to adapt quickly, often at great personal risk. This unpredictability adds another layer of tension to the battles, as the use of sorcery becomes as dangerous to the wielder as it is to the enemy. Characters like Quick Ben must rely not only on their power, but also on their ingenuity to navigate these shifting conditions. As the narrative drives toward its climax, the thematic focus on sacrifice, loyalty, and the burden of leadership becomes more pronounced. Tavore's decisions, though still not fully explained, begin to reveal the weight she carries and the cost of the path she has chosen. The Bonehunters, bound by shared hardship and mutual reliance, stand as a testament to the resilience of ordinary individuals in the face of extraordinary circumstances. By the end of this section, the various forces at play, military, political, and divine, are fully engaged, and the outcome of their Sangharsh remains uncertain. The stage is set for a Nirnayak resolution, one that will not only determine the fate of Lether and the Malazan Empire, but also shape the future of the world itself. Part 5. In the final portion of the Bonehunters, the many converging threads of the narrative reach a powerful and often unsettling resolution. Though true to the nature of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, closure is partial and layered rather than absolute. The conflicts that have been building, military, political, and divine, do not simply end. Instead, they transform, leaving lasting consequences for both characters and the world they inhabit. Adjunct Tavore Paran's campaign ultimately reveals itself to be something far more significant than a conventional military invasion. Her objective is not merely the defeat of the Letheri Empire, but the positioning of her army in response to a larger, more dangerous convergence of power. While her soldiers may never fully grasp the scope of her intentions, her actions demonstrate a profound awareness of the growing threat posed by forces such as the crippled god. Tavore's leadership, defined by silence and emotional distance, is recontextualized as a form of burden-bearing. She carries knowledge that isolates her, but enables her to act decisively in moments of crisis. The Bonehunters themselves emerge from the campaign profoundly changed. Their identity, forged through shared hardship and uncertainty, becomes one of the central emotional anchors of the novel. Characters like Fiddler embody the resilience and adaptability of the ordinary soldier, and their survival is not framed as triumph so much as endurance. The cost of that endurance is evident in the losses they suffer and the psychological toll of the battles they have fought. Yet there is also a sense of cohesion and purpose that endures, suggesting that their journey is far from over. In Lether, the destabilization of Emperor Rulad Sengar reaches its inevitable breaking point. His tragic arc, defined by manipulation, suffering, and an inability to escape the cycle of death and resurrection, underscores one of the novel's recurring themes, the destructive consequences of power divorced from agency. Rulad is both tyrant and victim, and his downfall reflects the broader collapse of the system that sustained him. The Malazan Empire, already weakened from within, is left vulnerable to both internal reform and external influence. Kalam Makar's storyline also finds a form of resolution, though not one of simple closure. His journey through the fractured remnants of the Malazan Empire reveals the extent to which centralized control has eroded. The claw, once a symbol of imperial precision and authority, has become a fractured and dangerous entity. Kalam's actions help to curb some of the most immediate threats posed by rogue elements, but the larger issue of instability within the empire remains unresolved. His role as a stabilizing force is significant, yet it is clear that no single individual can fully restore what has been lost. The involvement of ascendants reaches a peak in this final section, with Shadow Throne and Cotillion playing crucial roles in shaping the outcome of key events. Their interventions, while still enigmatic, are more clearly aligned against the growing influence of the crippled god. This alignment suggests a shift in the balance of divine power, as former manipulators become reluctant defenders against a greater threat. Other ascendants, drawn by the same convergence, contribute to a sense that the world is entering a new and more volatile phase. Magic, which has been increasingly unstable throughout the novel, remains unpredictable even as the immediate conflicts subside. The Warrens do not return to a state of normalcy, reinforcing the idea that the changes affecting the world are ongoing rather than temporary. This instability serves as both a practical challenge for characters and a symbolic representation of the broader upheaval taking place across all levels of existence. One of the most striking aspects of the conclusion is its emphasis on ambiguity. Victories are often partial, and defeats are rarely absolute. The Bonehunters survive, but at great cost. Tavore's mission advances, but its ultimate purpose is still not fully revealed. The threat of the crippled god is neither eliminated nor contained. Instead, it looms larger than ever, casting a shadow over future events in the series. Thematically, this final section reinforces the novel's exploration of sacrifice, compassion, and the burdens of leadership. Characters are repeatedly forced to make choices that carry significant moral weight, often with incomplete information and under immense pressure. The consequences of those choices ripple outward, affecting not only individuals but entire societies. As the Bonehunters draws to a close, it does not offer a sense of finality so much as a transition. The events of the novel reshape the political and metaphysical landscape of the Malazan world, setting the stage for the conflicts that will follow. The Bonehunters march on, their path uncertain but their resolve intact, while gods and mortals alike prepare for the next phase of an ever-escalating struggle.
Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more videos.